All right, welcome back. Hope you all had a great weekend. Today we're continuing our review of our newest RBT exam, where we're going through the next 10 questions and breaking them down together. If you're looking for our proven study materials, please check out rbtexamreview.com. We offer 3 full practice exams, a task list study guide, and our combo pack, which is our best deal. We also have our competency study guide as well. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Questions, comments, email me, leave a comment below. I'd love to help. As always, work hard, study hard. Let's get to our questions. Question 1. Spontaneous recovery is most closely related to what other procedure? When approaching the exam and we see a term, as we're reading the term, we need to start defining it in our head. So when we read spontaneous recovery, we need to stop and think about what is spontaneous recovery. Well, spontaneous recovery is the sudden reemergence of a previously extinct behavior. And if we do that, this question becomes very straightforward because the definition includes the procedure in it. So again, spontaneous recovery is most closely related to what other procedure? Well, it's not reinforcement because spontaneous recovery is not related to a reinforced behavior. It's not punishment, even though a behavior is being decreased. We're not talking about punishment as we talk about spontaneous recovery. It's not shaping. Shaping is trying to increase or change a behavior to reach a more terminal behavior. D is going to be our answer, extinction. Again, think about what spontaneous recovery is. You put a behavior on extinction. Extinction is successful. The behavior decreases. Suddenly, that behavior reemerges, let's say a month later. All of a sudden, the sudden reemergence is spontaneous recovery. Now, how do we respond to spontaneous recovery? We just re-implement the extinction procedure and that behavior will decrease again on its own. You just passed your RBT exam and want to celebrate. You text your group chat to meet you at the bar for drinks. From 6 p.m. to 8 p.m., you drink 4 glasses of wine. If you want to know the average time in between glasses of wine, what type of measurement would you use? So we're looking at some sort of measurement question here, right? And we want to know the average time in between glasses of wine. So first things first, we're looking for some sort of time measurement. If we look at our answer choices, duration, latency, and IRT all have to do with time. Rate is frequency over time. We're not necessarily concerned about the frequency of wine, right? How many glasses we've drank, so we can eliminate rate. Now we are going to try to determine average time in between glasses of wine. And if we're trying to determine time in between, what are we looking at or what can we use? We can use latency. Latency is going to be the time in between the SD and the response. Or we can use IRT, into response time, which is the time in between responses. Duration is simply the length of a single response, which is not what we're looking for. We're not looking for how long it takes us to drink a glass of wine. We're looking for time in between. So if we look at latency, which is from the SD to the first response, not necessarily what we want, right? Because we want the average time in between all glasses of wine. So in between all responses. So if we're looking for the average time in between all of our responses, we're going to use IRT or into response time. And RBT is teaching letter identification. This week, the letter target is the letter B. The RBT first writes the letter B in large font on a piece of paper and highlights and circles it. The RBT then removes the highlight and the circle. Finally, the RBT writes the letter B in a normal font. The RBT is doing what? If I covered up the answer choices and you read this question, what is your first instinct? What is your first instinct when the question wants to know what the RBT is doing? Well, let's take a look. The RBT writes the letter B in large font, highlights and circles it. To me, that looks like 3 prompts, right? Big letter, we're going to highlight and circle it. We really want to make sure that client picks the letter B. Then we remove the highlight and the circle. We remove 2 of the prompts. Then we remove the last prompt, which is the size of the letter. So what are we doing? Well, we're fading prompts, right? That would be my prediction, and I'm guessing most of you would predict that as well. However, if we look at our answer choices, prompt fading is not an answer choice. So what do we do, right? We look at A, task chaining. We know it's not task chaining because it has to do with our prompts, right? We're trying to remove the prompts. Look at B, transferring stimulus control. Transferring stimulus control is not as complicated as it sounds. What we're trying to do is change what evokes the correct behavior. So in the first instance, the correct behavior is evoked by a large letter B highlighted and circled. When we remove the highlight in the circle, the behavior is now evoked by just the large letter B. When we make the letter B normal font, the behavior is now evoked by the regular letter B. So by fading the prompt, we've started to transfer stimulus control. That's essentially what stimulus control is. You're fading prompts, okay, until you get the right SD, until you get the SD you want. And the SD we want, right, is the regular letter B. Providing reinforcement, no indication the RBT is reinforcing any behaviors here. We don't talk about reinforcement at all. And the manipulating, motivating operations. We're not talking about satiation. We're not talking about deprivation. We're not talking about wanting, not wanting. We're simply talking about removing prompts. And by removing prompts, we're changing what controls the behavior. First, the paper or the highlight circle in large font, then just a large font, finally the normal font. We've transferred stimulus control by fading the prompts. The RBT is B, transferring stimulus control. Giannis will put his head on the desk during test whenever the teacher is helping someone else. The function of this behavior is attention. What would be the most effective way to put this behavior on extinction? What is extinction? Extinction is withdrawing or withholding, I should say, not withdrawing, withholding reinforcement for a previously reinforced behavior. And the key to extinction is to understand the function, because that's what we're going to be withholding. If our behavior occurs for attention, we're going to withhold attention. If the behavior occurs for escape, well, we're going to prevent escape. If the behavior occurs for a tangible, well, we're going to withhold that tangible. Extinction is tricky because everyone thinks it's ignoring, right? That's just not the case, okay? If our function is escape, we're not necessarily ignoring the child, right? We're just not letting them escape the task. That's not ignoring, it's preventing escape from the task. However, in this case, the function of the behavior is attention. The behavior is putting the head on the desk. So if we want to put this behavior on extinction, what do we need to do? Well, we need to withhold the reinforcement, which is attention. So let's find that answer. A, follow through with the test and make sure Giannis completes the entire thing. That would be more of an escape extinction, right? If we're following through with demands. Provide Giannis with the fidget toy. Maybe that's tangible, maybe that's automatic. That's not necessarily targeting the head on desk behavior, however. C, refuse to allow Giannis a break until he finishes his test. Again, that's not necessarily the problem, right? What is the behavior? The behavior is putting his head on his desk, right? It's not completing the test. It's not completing the task. It's not fidgeting. It's putting head on desk. That's what we need to be aware of. So if we look at D, never acknowledge Giannis while his head is on his desk, that's when we're going to be putting that behavior on extinction. If Giannis in the past has received reinforcement for putting his head on his desk through attention, we're going to put on an extinction by withholding attention when Giannis puts his head on his desk. So our answer is D, never acknowledge Giannis while his head is on his desk. Last week, 2 children disrupted church service. This week, while driving to church, the mom handed the 2 kids $10 and tells them, "You must behave in church now." What did the mom do wrong? Question like this, what comes to mind? To me, it's a contingency versus a bribe question, right? We are giving $10 and now they must behave. But how does a contingency work? A contingency is reversed, right? If you behave in church now, I will then give you $10. When we provide the reinforcement first, before the behavior occurs, what are we doing? We're bribing, right? A bribe is basically a reverse of the contingency. So what did the mom do wrong? A, nothing, a contingency was established. Well, it wasn't. They've already got the $10. Now it's just up to them, right? Do they behave in church? Do they not? There is no if you behave. It's just here's $10. Now you have to behave. Not how the contingency should work. B, the mom should have started with a smaller amount of money first. Nothing indicates the amount of money. Okay. We never assume anything on the test. We only go by the information we know. We don't know anything about this value. Okay. That $10 could be any amount of money. We're not really sure why she picked that amount. Okay. So we can't say definitively she should have started with a different amount. C, the mom should have waited to give the reinforcer until right before church started. We're still facing the same issue if we do it that way, where they haven't even behaved yet, right? We haven't even seen the target behavior. A contingency relies on us seeing the target behavior before we give reinforcement. If we're handing out reinforcement before the behavior occurs, what are we doing? Well, we're the mom engaged in a bribe. In ABA, we don't bribe, right? We set contingencies, we don't bribe. You're an RBT working in a client's home. The client's dad asks you about a plant-based diet for their child. Since you are a vegetarian, you know a lot about plant-based diets. What is an acceptable way to respond to the dad? This is a tricky question, right? Because if you're a vegetarian and you know a lot about plant-based diets, okay, maybe you do have some good information. However, what does our ethical code say? What is our task? What is our role as the RBT? Well, the role as the RBT is implementation, right? We take our treatment plan and we implement. Yes, we must build rapport with families. We must make small talk and we must respect their wishes. But when it comes to specific questions like this about the client, such as diet, right, which is a serious thing, okay, how do RBTs respond? What should you do? A, present the dad with what you know about plant-based diets, but only facts and not your opinions. Maybe you do have the facts, right? But is that your role to provide dad with the facts on diet for their child? No, it's just not, right? And it's not because RBTs can't be trusted, right? The issue becomes ultimately the BCBA and the supervisor are responsible for what happens in this case. And if you give bad information, knowingly or unknowingly, and something happens, the supervisor is ultimately responsible. That is their role. The RBT's role is implementation. So B, give your opinion on how a plant-based diet has affected your life, okay? Well, maybe, right? If we're not actually giving advice on how they should handle their child, maybe this is just small talk, right? But they asked your opinion explicitly, right? And by giving your opinion on how it's affected your life, you're really commenting on a plant-based diet and how it might affect the child, which we shouldn't be doing as the RBT. C, tell the dad that you will consult with your BCBA and get back to him. Yes, that's always the most clear, simple answer, right? Task list, ethical code say we want open, clear communication. Task list, ethical code say all questions, concerns about case should be directed towards the supervisor. If you consult with your BCBA and they tell you, yeah, go ahead, talk with them about it, then you have freedom, right? Until then, though, what can we do? We can't just start telling them about these diets, okay? It's not our role as the RBT. And then finally, C, inform the dad that you can provide them with plant-based recipes to try. Again, maybe you're just being nice, but until we get word from the BCBA on how we're going to approach the plant-based diet, we shouldn't be pushing them one direction or the other, right? That's ultimately the lesson here, right? That's not your role as the RBT. Until you speak with your supervisor, you should say, let me talk with my BCBA. We'll get back to you. The answer here is C. Tell the dad that you will consult with your BCBA and get back to him. If you know your client makes several errors when first learning new skills, which of the following might be the best prompting procedure? Another one, if I covered up the answer choices, right, and I said, your client makes several errors when first learning new skills, how should we prompt? Immediately, I would think errorless learning. I would think physical prompts, right? I would think most to least. A good exercise to do as you're studying for the RBT exam is to try to do that. Try to answer questions with the answer choices covered up. What it will force you to do is actually critically evaluate the question. We're not just diving into the answer choices, we're actually thinking about it. So in this case, we know our client makes several errors when first learning new skills. How are we going to prompt? A, least to most. Starting with least to most, when you know your client's going to make a bunch of errors, doesn't make a lot of sense because what's going to happen is we're going to build up to the most prompt anyway. So if we're already going to build up to the most prompt, we might as well start where? Well, most to least, right? More than likely, you might need to use errorless, right? If they're just going to make a ton of errors and we need to prevent that some way. So there might be a lot of physical prompting involved, right? There might be a lot of hand holding, a lot of direct prompting to get the right answer out, okay? So most to least is going to be more effective than least to most. And C and D, gestural and modeling, are two specific types of prompts, okay? All we know is the client makes several errors, right? We don't know anything else about it. So we can't really say gestural or modeling is going to be the best prompting procedure. Modeling requires the client to copy you, but if we know they make several errors, right, are they going to be able to copy you successfully? Not sure. Gestural is even less intrusive, okay, where they just have to figure out based on a brief gesture. Most to least is going to be the safest bet here, where we can start with the most physical prompt needed and fade as necessary. It gives us the most wiggle room. It's going to allow us to help this client, right, who makes several errors, the best. The clients and stakeholders should be involved in which of the following components of treatment? Now, this is more of a broad ethical question, okay? The idea is collaboration. The idea is client dignity, maintaining client respect, client dignity. What kind of say does the client have in their treatment? Well, the client is the one receiving services. They're the one who's putting up with us every day, who we're basically running their lives in a lot of ways, right? They have all the say in the world to a limit, right? To a reasonable limit. Obviously, a capable adult will have more say than a 5-year-old. But that doesn't mean we exclude the 5-year-old from everything. Same with stakeholders, parents, grandparents, siblings, people involved in the client's life. This affects them as well. They are absolutely part of the team and absolutely should be involved in parts of treatment. So what components? Should they help select goals? Sure, right? I mean, part of our indirect assessments are doing what? Trying to identify specific goals and things we want to work on. What about interventions? Yes, if we want to, say, use an extinction procedure and the parents say, well, we just can't see ourselves being able to do that successfully, we're going to have to find a different intervention, okay? Again, we need to respect their culture, their ability, their resources, their time. What can we make work for everybody? And then selecting target behaviors, absolutely, right? We're going to go in. What do you want to focus on? What do you want to target? Now, all this, okay, is taken to a reasonable extent. End of the day, the supervisor is going to make their best judgment call, right? But just like you, the RBT has a say in treatment planning, so do client and stakeholders. We want to collaborate. We want to be part of a team. Client and stakeholders should be involved in which of the following components of treatment? D, all the above. Jason loves dark chocolate. It serves as a reinforcer, but Jason has several cavities. After 2 weeks of pairing, tokens now function as reinforcers and are used in the school and at home. Tokens are considered blank. Pretty common procedure. It's what we should be doing anyway, right? Is pairing things like praise and tokens with actual reinforcers, okay? We want to create reinforcers that can be used anywhere. Edibles can be dangerous because, yes, they can be extremely reinforcing, but there's health risks involved, right? There's fading concerns involved, okay? Edibles should be paired with other things to give other things reinforcing properties. That's already been done. Tokens, okay, now function as reinforcers. What type of reinforcers are tokens? Are they primary reinforcers? Well, primary reinforcers are unconditioned, things like food, water, sleep. Tokens have been conditioned, okay? Primary reinforcers are unlearned. Tokens have been learned. So A and B are both out. Primary reinforcers and unconditioned reinforcers, tokens are not, right? Tokens have been paired with this dark chocolate. They've been conditioned, they've been taught, they've been learned. What about C, automatic reinforcers? Well, automatic, another way to say automatic would be alone, not socially mediated, right? If I'm giving Jason the token, is that socially mediated, yes or no? Yes, right? A social party is involved. It's a two-way exchange. Tokens are not automatic. Tokens are going to be D, generalized conditioned reinforcers. They are obviously conditioned because they've been paired with dark chocolate, and they're generalized because they can be used at school and home. Generalized conditioned reinforcers are essential to good behavior plans. Praise and tokens and money are probably the three most common generalized conditioned reinforcers, otherwise known as GCRs. And then finally, which of the following measurement procedures would be least appropriate to record instances of self-injury that look like a rapid strike to one's own face? It's a little bit of a tricky question, okay? It kind of takes a little thought. So let's do our drill, cover up the answer choices, and just think about it. If we want to record instances of self-injury that are a rapid strike to one's own face, what do we think that looks like? In your mind, you're probably picturing a quick hit to the face that happens very fast, right? A rapid strike. So if, let's say, less than 2 seconds. So if we look at our answer choices now, okay, and we have rate, frequency, IRT, and duration, could we take rate on this? Sure, these should be easy to count, right? A rapid strike to the face is going to have a clear beginning and end. Frequency shouldn't be a problem. Rate shouldn't be an issue, okay? So what about IRT and duration? Well, if we could take frequency, we can certainly take into response time, time in between strikes. What's wrong with duration? Duration is going to be total time of the strike. And if strikes are rapid, strikes may never last more than a second. So what really is going to be the point of duration? How can you really reduce something from 2 or 1 seconds without removing it, right? Duration doesn't do us much good here. Okay, we already know it's rapid. We already know it's 1 or 2 seconds. It's not going to do us a lot of good. The least appropriate way to record an instance of self-injury would be D, duration. Okay, thanks for watching. Please check out rbtexamreview.com for all of our study materials. Wednesday, we've got our practice question series continuing. We offer 3 practice exams on our website, a task list study guide, and the combo pack. If you're new to the channel, like and subscribe. If you're returning, like and subscribe. Any questions or comments, let me know. Love to help. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.